Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this evening's session, generously sponsored and hosted by the Minara Chamber of Commerce, which basically applies for leadership in business through personal excellence and collaboration. Now, tonight we intend to cover a very important topic, which is leadership as healing. And traditionally, one would expect that you would speak to this in the political context. But perhaps the most glaring example of leadership as healing was in none other than the person of our Prophet ﷺ, who entered Mecca and used his leadership to heal the community that had been at war with him and the deen for so many years. It is recorded that he forgave everyone, and no one was killed for their previous deeds, whether they converted or not. Taking from that example, recently we've seen in the Middle East the outreach from the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, reaching out to the Emir of Qatar, and they healed their differences. Of course, Ireland was torn by sectarian violence, another example of healing by the leadership. But very close to home, we were fortunate enough to see in our own lifetime that the peaceful transition from the apartheid regime to a democratic state and the leadership demonstrated by the late President Mandela, who basically averted a great tragedy. But I'm not the expert on this. It gives me great pleasure to invite to address us tonight author, poet, activist Shabbir Banoobhai, who is basically very, very well known in the international poetry festivals. And he's studied widely in various schools and universities, his works, that is. All of his writings, which encompass about 18 books, may be found on the website veilsoflight.com. Included in his writing are philosophical reflections, essays, letters, novels, a novel, and a defining book on leadership titled Leadership as Healing, which is going to be our tonight. He's been an activist from his student days when he was president of the SRC at the college where he studied. Remarkably, he interacted with the late Steve Biko. He took part in the 1980 student protests against unequal education, and his participation led to him having to forego his own MBA studies and to leave university where he was then teaching. He decided to devote the last part of his life to sharing knowledge and insights on living with integrity to those who may benefit from it, especially the disadvantaged, by helping them to recognize and discover their potential and the power they have to lift, to fulfill this potential. If they live purposeful, imaginative, and creative lives. He considers that we are all meant to be leaders in our own right in some way, and that if we stagnate, we are more likely to be frustrated, become angry, fall ill, and even prone to violence. So without further ado, I hand over to Shabbir Banoobhai. Assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam, Ashraf, and salams to everyone else who is listening in, and as well as good evening to you. It's really a great pleasure for me to spend these few minutes with you talking about leadership, but with a slightly unusual focus and understanding, I would say, of leadership. Most of us consider leadership to be an elitist activity. where certain people who, are considered to be privileged uh, take the lead and others follow their lead. My understanding of leadership is somewhat different. I believe that every one of us is meant to be a leader in our own right, in some way, in whichever way we feel inclined to begin from there and then to grow organically and to increase our area of influence. Uh, this is so partly because most of the illnesses of the world, or at least many of the illnesses of the world, are caused by established leaders themselves. So if we were to wait for established leaders to save us from the illnesses that they themselves have caused, then we will actually wait forever. That is never likely to happen, for the simple purpose that the established leaders often are more interested in self-preservation, self-gain, and in their own self-interests. We only have to look at a country such as ours and look at its 300-year-old history and to know that there is such extreme inequality prevalent even today in our own country. But this inequality is not only prevalent in our country, it is inequality that is prevalent throughout the world. And therefore, it is not surprising that the disadvantaged are depressed, angry, and sometimes even violent. My thesis is that only if we are all able to fulfill our potential and enable others to fulfill theirs, will we be able to overcome the stagnation, disconnect, and disharmony that are devastating us. Fortunately, we live in the preeminent age of creativity, innovation, and possibility. So although the task of renewal seems daunting, we have a rare opportunity to enable everyone to change their lives and change our world, and especially the post-COVID age, for the better. The reference that you made, Ashraf, just now to the leadership of the Prophet, I found particularly valuable because leaders, I think, as demonstrated by the Prophet as well as by all prophets and all saints of every religion, leaders are really healers, ultimately. And they help us to overcome a fractured vision of existence. And through helping us to overcome a fractured vision of existence, they enable us to heal. Illnesses arise from a lack of fluidity, harmony, and equilibrium within the mind and the body, from stagnating or being detached from our deepest selves, others, and the earth, particularly afflicting those of all persuasions who have ceased to grow or have not been allowed to grow. Healing lies in homeostasis, in balance, in harmony, in rhythm, in growth, in movement, and in fluidity. Healing comes from energy, from connectedness, from being forgiving, generous, compassionate, and just, and actively exercising our freedom and power. Disease comes from a lack of energy, from inflexibility, stagnation, disharmony, and disconnect. As leadership is nothing but a coming alive of our essence of consciousness, of a vital life force within us. And life is innately healing. Leadership is healing. But this means that all the characteristics of leadership, all the facets of integrity are healing. Love is healing. Beauty is healing. Truth and justice are healing. Generosity, gratitude, and forgiveness are healing. Power, energy, fluidity, and change are healing. The resultant freedom to take risks, to explore, to renew, and to be creative is healing. In those references, I really covered a vast spectrum of what leadership involves, and every facet of leadership, when practiced properly and with integrity, is actually healing. So my understanding of healing being a very fundamental uh, outcome of good leadership goes beyond a common understanding of healing as simply getting people together. In encouraging people to develop their potential, that too is healing. In leaders try to live with meaning. They try to live purposefully, but living with meaning is healing. Living purposefully is healing. So every aspect of what a leader does, provided we understand the meaning of leadership fully, is actually healing. Now, let us say that we all need to become leaders in our own right. Our problem today is that so many of us have outsourced our power, have outsourced our responsibility, have outsourced our growth, and outsourced it to others, and are relying on others to do the things we should be doing for ourselves. In outsourcing our power, we obviously stagnate. And in stagnating, we become depressed, and then we become ill. And also, aligned to the illness is extreme anger, because we feel and we know we have potential, we know we can do more, but sadly we often do not know what it is that we really have, what this potential means. We live without power, without healing power, and therefore, being powerless, we tend to become even more angry. And throughout the world, wherever you look in the world, you will notice that when people become powerless, they invariably become angry. I often say that if Eskom were to deprive us of power for 1 hour a day, for a week or a month, can you imagine how frustrated we would actually be? And yet, imagine we, most of us, live our entire lives without being aware of the power we have to transform our lives and to live healthy, healing, uplifting lives. This is something that is tragic beyond belief. But let's look now at what leadership means. So if you buy into what I'm saying, that we need to become leaders in our own right, then we really need to understand what does it mean to be a leader? And then after that, how do we become one? So even if we buy into the thesis that we need to become leaders in our own right, we still need to go further and we need to know, but what does it mean and how do I become one? The tragedy of most of our lives, and especially, the tragedy of most established leaders, is that their understanding of leadership is very limited. If people are involved in business leadership, they only see their growth directed in very narrow ways that relate to economics. Or if someone else is, interested in another field, they see their growth in terms of that field in which they have a sort of specific interest. But my understanding of leadership is to live with integrity. And my understanding of integrity is particularly, I would say, significant, because integrity does not just mean only being honest. Integrity means to live an integrated lives. All illness comes from disintegration and from disconnect. So if we want to be leaders in the true sense of the word, we should live integrated lives, lives where we honor the inner and the outer, the mind, the body, and the spirit, the masculine and the feminine, ourselves and others, the artistic, the scientific, the economic, the functional, and the spiritual, the personal, the professional, the organizational, and the societal, knowing, doing, and being. All of those constitute the areas of our lives that we need to become more proficient at in order to live full lives and do justice to our lives.
Shabbir, may I just remind you that we have about only 11 minutes. This is a very short session, and we have participants. Are you going to be able to take any questions?
Uh, okay, I think I've
You can
given
come up.
you some
Please take up to
overview
you.
of my understanding of leadership. Let me give you a few more central facets to this. At the heart of being a powerful human being is to know our potential. And our potential is vast, infinite. In fact, my personal feeling is that our potential itself is not really our own potential, but it is the potential of the divine within us. So our potential is like a unending well, an unending sea, and it can never be exhausted. And also, not only our potential, but the potential of every human being, as well as the potential of every single thing in existence. So that means that every business has untold potential. Every person has untold potential, regardless of whether we are men or women or children. And to exploit our potential, we require power. But we often don't know what power is available to us to be leaders and to be powerful leaders. This power comes from two ecosystems. The one ecosystem of power is that which we can consider a core or innate power ecosystem. That is the innate power which we all possess to live full lives, the power of consciousness, the power of essence, the power of love, the power of transcendence, the power of oneness, the spirit that we have. It's extraordinarily powerful. Then, in addition to the core power ecosystem that is available to us, we also have an expanded environmental power system that we can access in order to live full lives and be functional leaders. And that relates to gaining the skills and attributes that are required to be leaders. What skills do you need? What attributes do we need? As well as knowing how to relate to others, how to take people along with us, because the journey of leadership cannot be accomplished alone, but it is a journey that involves taking others with us. So I think with that, I've given you some background into my own core understanding of leadership. And from there, I am happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
So I'd just like to summarize while the questions are coming through. The topic that we have is leadership as healing. And you started by saying that leadership is really an elitist function at present. And those that don't have it, disadvantaged, become frustrated, angry, and sometimes violent. And this arises from stagnation. But we all have the potential to become leaders. And unfortunately, in doing that, we often outsource all of our potential, which has now become a habit. But you're encouraging us to live life with integrity because the potential that we have is vast. We actually don't know the power that we have, which is both innate as well as expanded. There are skills that people have, but while taking us on the journey, you've got to take others with you. I think perhaps an apt example that comes to mind is in the person of Elon Musk. There is the silo theory. He was saying, him and Steve Jobs both said that if you operate as a silo within an organization, then you're of no use to anyone. You have to collapse those silos, and you've got to spread the potential that you have. So you can't be a silo, you can't be an island in a stream around you that is full of potential. I don't see any questions. Shabbir, I think maybe you can carry on. We have only about 5 minutes for you to give us a little bit more wisdom.
So what I would like to say is the following: that you know, it's a really a vast field, Ashraf. I spent 2 years writing this book that I have on leadership. In the course of writing the book, and I referenced 1,500 books on leadership, management, art, psychology, science, neuroscience, technology, creativity, geography, history, politics, economics, because leadership really encompasses all of those areas. So I'm trying to say that it would be incredibly difficult to to say too much more about the subject right now. But I'm trying to inspire people to start a journey of learning, start a journey of renewal. And in order to do that, I'm actually running a course on leadership. And the next course starts, on the first weekend of February. The course, is structured over 4 consecutive weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, for 1.5 hours on each of those days. And it and it is a very detailed and comprehensive course. So effectively, it's a 12-hour course, and that, if you are interested, might give you a far more in-depth understanding of what I am actually trying to promote, the kind of living and the kind of leadership that I'm trying to promote. So if you want at some stage to follow up, you can text me on my mobile, and the number is 082 905 1251. I'll repeat that, 082 905 1251, and we can take it up further. Because really, at the end of it, it is about investing. It is about investing in our own lives in order to discover what more we are capable of knowing, what more we are capable of doing, and what more we are capable of being. So it is all of those areas. It's about knowing, doing, and being. It's about living with integrity. It's about enhancing our personal, our professional, our organizational, and our societal lives. And it is about discovering a single set of principles that will help us to succeed in all of those avenues and arenas of our lives. A single set of principles. So you don't need different principles to run your personal life and different principles to run your professional life, your organizational life, and your spiritual life, because exactly one set of principles will enhance every single aspect of your life. And that makes sense, does it not, when I talk about living an integrated life? So if we live an integrated life, naturally, a single set of principles should help us really uplift all our lives. All that it requires really is to make a commitment to learn, to make a commitment to grow, make a commitment to renew, to be creative, and to be adaptable. If we fail to change, if we fail to grow and to adapt, especially in this age that we are now living, we will really live very arid lives, disconnected lives, fearful lives, where
Shabbir,
we will become
unfortunately,
more and more constructed and more inward looking and more closed.
Unfortunately, Shabbir, we've run out of time. It's an immense topic, and I'm sure that we have to revisit it. And for those that feel they need to know a little bit more from an expert like yourself, I'm sure they'll be in touch with you. I only have a minute to say thank you very much for taking your time and sharing your knowledge. And to all the participants, thank you very much for attending. Last but not least, Minara Chamber and the technical team, thank you very much for arranging this. I just have a minute to say I wish you all well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And take care and be safe. And on a happy note, I see that SAPRA has limitedly approved ivermectin. So there is some hope for a lot of people out there. Thank you very much.
Okay, shukran and salams to everyone and a good evening to everyone. Take care.
Thank you.